everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of the case study of Vanitas. And last episode we had lots of questions, which was a very apt title for the episode. And getting to, it almost seemed like a starting point, a true starting point for Vanitas and Noé's relationship, where it started out where Noé had this like beautiful infatuation and like awe at what Vanitas was, like, oh my god, the blue vampire. And then as he's realized that Vanitas is kind of, Cinderella gremlin, he's kind of like, okay, no, I don't really care for you as a person, but I'm infatuated with your powers. I want to know more about you as a person, so maybe I'll understand what your deal is, because you're kind of confusing me, and I'm going to follow you till I figure it out. And Vanitas is like, I really don't want you to be in harm's way, but I guess I can't stop you, so okay, fine. Like, they just kind of mutually agree to be like, fine, whatever. And I kind of like that. I like that they're kind of at odds with each other right now, because it gives them a starting point, and we as the audience know that by the end of the series, maybe they're going to grow to care about each other. Who knows? Supposedly we're going to have a bad ending, and I'm not a fan of that, but that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it at the end of the series. We'll just figure that all out. That's fine. I don't have too many notes from the last episode, although Alien Forever and then a couple other, like Tony Simeon, some other individuals noted that the teacher's voice actor, I told who the teacher was voice acted by, they also did Nagisa Kaoru from Neon Genesis back in the day, and I was like, oh my god, what a callback. Now, I had a pretty big crush on Kaoru in Neon Genesis. The teacher freaks me out, although that seems rather foreboding. So I like that he's still doing voice acting work. Only voice acting the creepy teacher instead of, he's voice acting the Gendo character now instead of Kaoru. So we think. But I thought that was really interesting. And also, K.A. pointed out that the voice actor for young Noé from episode 5 was also the same as Carl the raccoon from Bungo Stray Dogs. Why not? So every time you hear Carl in Bungo Stray Dogs, know that that is young Noé. I thought that was just really, really funny. I thought that was humorous. But yeah, I'm really excited, y'all. I have not watched the case study of Vanitas in a few days because I've been gone. And so I went back and re-listened to the discussion for episode 6. And yeah, lots of things to think about. But I feel like we're setting up the themes. This feels like a starting point. Charlatan's gotten away, but there's a mystery behind them. And there's lots of things to think about. So that is encouraging. But before we start real quick, I want to give a shout out over to Patreon to thank our patrons, not only for supporting me and this channel, but also for helping to let me be able to do reactions like these. So our philanthropy tier over on Patreon gets a special shout out in videos, as well as gets to break ties and gets the perks of the other tiers, which means getting Discord access, getting things a week early, getting to vote in the polls, all that fun stuff. So a special shout out to our philanthropy tier patrons: Edgar, Anime Annie, Dana, Translucent Men, Shimoyama, Be Happy, Tyrone, Nameless Monster, Eric Sunspots, and Alex Cornejo. You all are amazing. I am so grateful for your support. I cannot thank you enough. And for you and all of our patrons and supporters here on YouTube, all of my love. Thank you. But yeah, we're not wasting more time, right? We're going to dive right into this and just see what all happens. I am pretty excited, y'all. I hope you all are as well. But we are going to start episode 7 of the case study of Vanitas. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do this, y'all. Okay, show. Okay, show. All right. This episode answered a lot of questions that I had about shipping, about who to ship, what to do, who to ship in this series, and it's all become very clear to me, right? Because you have Jean, who is our dear sweet Jean, that is represented here with this nice pink line here. And then we have our dear sweet Noé, and we'll put Dami in here as well, that are represented by this nice little thin purple line right there. And they kind of have, different relationships with each other and others. And then you have the blue here, where we have Vanitas, who of course is the the vampire of the blue moon. So you have this nice representative of like this blue and purple and pink. Basically, this show is about a bunch of bisexual vampires. And Vanitas, yes, this entire cast, they're all bisexual, they're all into each other. It's fine. No, but seriously though, there is a lot of shipping that goes on in this show, and it's been kind of the joke in the comments that it's like, well, this is supposed to be like BL vampires. I'm not seeing a lot of BL. No, this episode makes it pretty clear that Vanitas' relationship with Jean is it's not even one-sided. It's one-sided, but it's there for a reason, right? So we need to break it down. And poor Noe, there are a few things that are very apparent after this episode. One, Dami clearly likes Noe, but realizes he's a baka, and he's the most naive, oblivious person under the sun. She's just like, you would be, wouldn't you? So that's Dami's problem at the moment. Noe is the most summer child of summer childs, where he's just like, doesn't know what love is, doesn't understand it. He's asking Vanitas of all people for explanations, and I'm like, Vanitas doesn't love himself, much less be able to tell you what love means. And case in point, Vanitas hates himself. And so the idea of someone loving him seems to be impossible. And he's like, I can't imagine what type of person would love me. And so I could never be with someone like that. Which is the saddest thing in the world. It was giving me very Eren Yeager vibes from Attack on Titan. And I was like, damn, show, why are we doing this, right? Why are we doing this? But we get a little bit into Vanitas' personality and why he gravitates towards Jean, because he knows there's nothing there. It's just a relationship of convenience. And so we'll talk about that, because there's a little bit there between them, but we're going to talk about that. And then Luca, I feel sorry for Luca. Bless his heart. We're going to talk about him too. But yeah, so we need to talk about this episode, the tarte tatin. The only reason I know what tarte tatin is because I watched the Great British Bake Off, and I can't bake and I can't make it. So I envy that Noe is just like, oh my God, tarte tatin, I love it. So let's examine Noe. We're going to examine him here. So with Noe, for example, we have Noe and the idea that he loves sweets. He loves sweets, the tarte tatin. Whereas Vanitas, funny enough, thinks the tarte tatin is way too sweet, so he is not a sweet person. Play on words there, not into sweets themselves, and perhaps not a sweet person as well. He's like, no. But I love the chibis in this episode. I love how Noe is just sitting there like Noe would be me. I'm a big foodie. So when I see like good food, I'm like, oh my God. And I have a big sweet tooth. So I would be sitting there being like, this is amazing. Oh my God. And they're at this really nice restaurant. I thought for a minute it was like Jean or Luca's home is where I thought they were, and that the cooks just brought them out food. But this is a restaurant. It is like very pastel, very pretty, very elegant, and it has and of course, Vanitas, if you notice, is not eating or drinking hardly anything. The irony of all this is that the other vampires are eating and drinking like it's no big deal, but the human is the one not eating or drinking and seeming more like a vampire than the vampires are, right? So that's very fascinating. But Luca, we'll put him in green over here because I feel for Luca. I do. Bless his heart. Luca, he clearly likes Jean. He likes Jean, or at least he likes the idea of liking Jean, but he's a kid. So I feel for Luca because, he's got this crush, but he's a child, so he doesn't quite understand how love works, and he just wants to grow up so he can feel those emotions. And I'm like, dude, don't say you want to grow up because it may not turn out to be, all that you hoped for. So I had wondered if Luca, back when we first met him, if he was one of those, if this world building thing was going to be a thing where, because like in a lot of vampire stories, like if a kid is turned into a vampire, they stay a child. And so even if they're hundreds of years old, they retain the appearance of a little kid. But the world building in this series is not the same as other vampire narratives, where Luca, it will grow up. They will age. They're like humans in that they do have an aging process. They're just developed differently than humans. So it, like we said, does give it like a sci-fi twist to it. So Luca is going to grow up as we go. But yeah, one of my favorite parts of this entire episode is that you see Noé just like digging into the tartatan and just having a good time. And I just love the animation of Vanitas going, oh, too sweet. Like he just barely touches it. He's like, oh, no. Mm-mm. So the thing about it is that I feel like Vanitas, he does like Noé, but he doesn't want Noé to like him. So one of the only reasons he's putting up with Noé and likes being around him is because he believes that Noé doesn't like him. When Noé's like, oh, I don't like you, I don't really care for you, that's Vanitas being like, okay, good. We can work together. But what I fear is Vanitas sees under the surface that Noé could like him, and he doesn't want that to happen. So he's doing everything in his power to drive Noé away and keep Noé at an arm's length. He's like, nope. He's like, I don't want anybody liking me because they shouldn't like me for whatever reason. We as the audience don't know why that is yet. He comes across with this kind of, gremlin personality, but we don't know his backstory. So whatever it is, Vanitas is like, no, I don't want anybody to love me because I don't deserve it. For whatever the reason is. And so he is trying his hardest to take action to make sure that Noé doesn't get to that point. He's like, I don't want you to love me. Mm-mm. And he's tolerating Noé right now because Noé says he doesn't. He doesn't love Vanitas. He doesn't even like him. He's just staying with him because it's convenient and because he wants to know more about the book of Vanitas. So, I like that Lucas says that Noé talks about the teacher bringing the tartatan home, and Lucas says that he got a recipe from someone, and Dami's like, oh my God, was it my uncle that gave you the recipe? Don't tell me that it was. And so then they talk about the events of the night before. So it's only been a day since the ball. It has not been that long since the ball ended. And Lucas says that it's thanks to you that my life and the lives of many vampires were saved. I like Lucas' hair kind of looks like a little cat. Looks like little cat ears coming out. And Noé doesn't seem to want to take credit, right? He's like, oh, yeah. He's like, I really didn't do anything. It was kind of all Vanitas. He's like, Vanitas saved me. Vanitas saved the other vampires. He also killed the girl, which is what he ends up with. And that kind of drives him back where he's like, I didn't really do anything. He's like, I didn't even save the girl from getting killed. He's like, I didn't have much to do in terms of last night's affairs. Right? And that's when Vanitas tries the tartatan. He's like, it's too sweet. They just licked it, right? He's like, eh. And so that's when Jean thanks Noé as well, saying, you protected Master Luca in my absence. So she clearly, now, whether Jean has a crush on Luca or not, I don't think that she has a crush on a child, right? I think that at this point, she very much she wants to protect Luca. However, if Luca gets older and when he's a mature adult, there's nothing to say that need to protect someone can't develop into more, because it's kind of happened that way with Dami and Noé. Dami started out wanting to protect Noé and to keep him safe, and those feelings have kind of developed into something more. The only problem is Noé does not like Dami the same way, and Dami knows it, and she's just like, I'm fine. She'll just it'll be unrequited, I guess. Right? And she says, I'm truly grateful. And Noé's like, oh, well, he said, actually, and that's when he's going to talk about Vanitas, and then he's given the extra cake. It was not me who ended the turmoil. It was Vanitas's power. And that's when I like Luca's little hair flips like little cat ears. He's like, oh, yes. Yes, I'm aware of Vanitas's power having some sort of effect in this. He's like, I'm very aware of what his role was. No curse bearers had to be beheaded, and that is without a doubt thanks to him. Right? The executioners didn't have to step in thanks to Vanitas. And I just love that Vanitas is such a troll. Vanitas is reveling in the trolling. He just has the fork sticking out of his mouth. He just revels in the idea of being a nuisance, right? And just mucking up people's plans. And he's like, however, he's like, before I convey my gratitude, I want you to apologize to Jean for the other day. And he's like, well, whatever for? And it wasn't even about the night before. It was about the first day they met with Jean where he kissed her. Right? He's like, you kissed her. You forced yourself on her, which he kind of did, just to be clear. He did kind of force himself on Jean at the moment. It was to get her to put the gauntlet down. So let's establish some things about Vanitas. His encounter, the first encounter with Jean, I feel was twofold. It was to disengage the arm, the gauntlet that she was using, and to test what type of person she was. Like, you know, is she going to be the type of person that would be wooed by such actions, or is she the type to like be repulsed? And what he was wanting was for her to be the type to be repulsed. Because again, he doesn't want anybody to love him. He wants to be able, for Vanitas, if she doesn't like him, that means she can easily leave him when things go awry. And that's what he wants, right? So I feel like him first encountering her was to do two things. One, to disengage the gauntlet because it was going to be a problem for them to deal with, but also to test and see, is she going to be the type of girl that is wooed by me, or is she going to be repulsed? If she's repulsed, score. Like, it's just like one of those situations. And he's like, oh, you mean the kiss? I love that he's just like, what are you talking about? And Jean, and then Noé's like, wait, what are we talking about? What was happening? Because I don't think Noé really knew what was going on in the moment. He was like, wait, I'm supposed to be doing something. What's happening? And didn't realize how much he kissed her. He's like, you can start by apologizing for that. And he's like, oh, my bad. Like, just that's it. That's the apology. He's like, oh, my bad. Sorry. Like, just that's, because to him, that's all it needs to say. And Luca's not accepting of that. And he's like, you're just a pain in the ass. And that's when Vanitas says, now to who am I apologizing to? You or Jean? And I think that Vanitas knows that Jean cares for Jean, that Luca cares for Jean a lot more than Vanitas maybe cares for Jean. He knows that. And Luca's like, well, you're apologizing to Jean, obviously, because you accosted her, right? And he says, then I have no need to apologize. And I love he flicks the little star. It's a very Gojo gesture from Jujutsu Kaisen where he's just like, we're in love. Like, I love that. Just, it feels like Jean and I are in love with each other. It looks like a Daft Punk music video where the framing of it is, where he's just like, see, we're in love. And I love Jean's reaction where she's like, keep your fantasies to yourself. God, I love Jean so much. Because here's the thing. Yeah, Jean, if we're going to be clear about this, Jean does not love Vanitas. Now, again, can that develop? Who knows? It's a long series. We'll find out. But at the moment, she's like, she does not like Vanitas. She's like, no. This is just a relationship of convenience and circumstance. And she's like, absolutely not. I love the dead drop to her. And it's almost like, it's self-harm, essentially, because when Vanitas chuckles at her saying, like, drop dead, you know, he's just like, he has that, like, kind of wobbly smile on his face, and it's almost like he's thinking to himself, well, of course she wouldn't love me. Why would anybody love me? And I'm just like, Vanitas, why are you being this way? Stop. Because he just chuckles. He says, I'm not fantasizing. And that's when he reveals the mark. And so it's literally like a claiming mark. He says we share that sort of relationship. And it literally is a blossom that has bloomed on his skin. Which makes sense now because he had the mark. So apparently the blue moon vampire bit him on the arm. And that's where he got the mark from there. But now he has the mark from Jean as well. So I'm kind of like, is that just for humans though? Because Dami doesn't have a mark from Noé. And Noé doesn't have a mark from her. So maybe it's just vampires to humans that share that contact. And I love the coffee spit take from Dami where she's like, pfft. Like, what? I love that. That was so funny. And Luca and Noé are like, what? And it's like, he's marked. And it's like a rose. The mark left when vampires imbue the victims of their bloodlust with some of their power. So it seems like there's a stipulation. It's not just, it's bloodlust. So marking itself is an act of bloodlust to give power. So it is a very intentional act. It is not like what what Noe and Dami do on the rooftop, where they're just exchanging blood, because it's a thing that they're doing, you know, just exchanging blood, like as a friendship thing, or at least to Noe it is. But in this case, if you are marked, it means your power was given to you from a vampire by sucking your blood. Okay, so that explains, like, so apparently when he was essentially assaulted, perhaps, my theory is he was assaulted by the Blue Moon Vampire, and that's how he got into this state. So when he was assaulted by the Blue Moon Vampire and was given the power, which kind of, if you are somebody that has been in that situation, oftentimes, like an act like this, maybe it is also Vanitas getting some control in his life over that. So using Jean as a means of regaining agency. Because, yeah, if he was assaulted by the Blue Moon Vampire and didn't want those powers, and they were given to him without him truly wanting it, then there is that sense of loss of control and agency over your own body in that situation. And so him telling Jean that she has to, whenever she sucks blood, come to him, that puts him, oddly enough, in a position of control, so that his body being used is something he is controlling, and he regains some agency through that move. That makes a lot of sense. So that kind of is hinted at in this as well. And Jean's like, I don't remember doing this. So yeah, Jean has no memory of this happening. And Vanitas explains why her memory would be spotty. He's like, you were in a trance when you fed on me. He says, was my blood delicious? And of course they all have like the Yuri on Ice lip glosses, so much that you left this mark upon me. And John is like, I did not intend for this to happen. And then Luca is like, did you really suck his blood? And she's like, oh, well. He's like, is this the sort of man that you like, that you would do that for? And she's like, where did that come from? Because, yeah, Luca likes her. And he's like, is this the sort of man that you want to be with when you get older? And she's just like, what are you talking about? And she's like, how could you leave your mark on a member of the Blue Moon clan? Like, it's as if you're claiming him as your own. And she's like, oh, well, no, that's, yeah, right? And she's like, but she can't talk about it because they don't know she's a curse bearer. She can't speak about it. So I'm curious why has Vanitas not lifted the curse? Why has he not removed the curse from her? What's up with that? Why is that the thing? So that there is something there too. Like, why? Because his whole purpose is to remove the curse. So why not? Why not remove the curse? Is there something special about her that is preventing him from doing that? We don't know. But she can't talk about it at the dinner table. And I like Vanitas is like, oh, like his expression of, ooh, are we not going to talk about this? And he smiles because he realizes that she is not going to give up the goat. She's going to do exactly what he wants her to do. He has got her in a position where she will do what he asks because she doesn't want anybody to know. Which is kind of devious, right? He's cornered her into being able to be used because he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I took the joke too far. It's okay. But everybody thinks that her hesitation means that she actually likes him, right? And he's like, Luca, this is John's mark, but she did not wish to leave it. I like that he's at least honest about that. And then they blame it. And then, of course, I love Luca being like, are you saying you forced her? Like, I love that he's just like, I'm about to like murder you if that's the case. And he says, no, it's the curse bearer's voices. The curse bearer's voices that night were so loud, they were affecting other vampires. She was affected by it. It's no big deal. It's just something that happened. Right? And so he tries to pass it off as it's not really Jean's fault. As it's not her fault. It was a lack of control that made her attack me. And they're like, is that true, Jean? And she says, yes. And so Luke is like, oh, good. You don't actually like him. We're fine, right? Great work. But he's like, you would never leave your mark on such a terribly rude, selfish man such as him. Yeah, like the way that Vanitas presents himself leads people to believe he's very rude and selfish and awful, which Vanitas is like, I am. And so he doesn't try to act any differently. And he's like, oh, good. He's like, I'm glad you're all right, Jean. And that's when she's like, I gotta go take care of this. I like that she's like, just yoinks, picks up Vanitas. I love that he's just like sitting there like waving over her shoulder, and she's like, I'm gonna be back. I'll bring him back when I'm done. And then Noe is like, well, I gotta go find out what's going on. And then I love that Luke is like, why is everybody leaving through the window? And Dami doesn't go after him. She's like, nah, he's fine. But that's when Noe watches. I don't know. I want to see if he watches him from above. And so Vanitas knows that she's a curse bearer and knows that she doesn't want Luca to find out. So that's why he didn't say anything anymore. He made up the lie about it and said you were stricken with the urge to suck blood. So I made something up. And then him just looking at her, he's like, I've asked you before, Jean, are you a curse bearer? But she doesn't quite, he's like, you've no intention of saying if you are or not. So that's the thing. We don't really know, are there different levels of curse bearers? Are there like pseudo curse bearers? Why can't he cure her? And why won't she say what she is? She doesn't really want to talk about it. But she's like, it doesn't always happen like that. So she's probably saying that there's more to it than just being a curse bearer or not a curse bearer. There are layers. She's like, I can suppress my thirst for blood if I take my medicine. And I'm like, medicine from where? From who? Why is this a thing? So apparently there's this medicine. There's this medicine for curse bearer tendencies. But that opens up a whole host of questions. Like, you would think that would be a widespread thing that people would be using, right? Otherwise, and Vanitas seems rather interested in that. He's like, okay, what's with this medicine? I need you to tell me about that. So I figure that he's going to keep her around to learn about that. So maybe it's something they can share with Noe and others as they go. He's like, I've never heard of such a medicine. How interesting. And that when she says, listen, human, that's when his eyes, like, there's a lot of moments throughout this episode where Vanitas's eyes are like watching her, and it almost seems like every time she says something about human, she's judging him, and he doesn't like that, or it reminds him of the blue vampire or whatever. She's like, don't speak a word of this to anyone. I beg you. And she's kind of in a rough position too, because she's supposed to be an executioner, right? And if they find out that she's a curse bearer or some semblance of it, then not only is she no longer going to be an executioner, but she's possibly going to be executed herself. And she wants to protect Luca and stay alive, so she doesn't obviously want that to happen. So she asks him not to speak of it. And just the way that Vanitas looks at her, the way that he looks at her trembling, like just seeing like how, because here's the thing, Jean very much wants to live. She very much wants to live, right? She wants to stay alive. I gather the distinct impression just from these last few episodes that Vanitas, he has a mission. He has a mission, but no love for life. It's almost like the mission that he's on is to get revenge on the Blue Moon Vampire, and that he has no interest in living beyond that. He just wants to get his revenge and then is fine if he dies. Because just like in the OP, he doesn't really seem to take any like interest in the sweeter or finer things in life. He's just like, eh. So when he looks at her, he kind of blushes and he's like, oh. And I love that he just like ruffles her hair. He's like, oh, come on, John. He's like, oh, you silly goose. And she's just like, stop. And then just like, it's almost like this sensuous act. He's like, have no fear, Jean. I'm not the kind of man who spills the secrets of the woman I love. But he loves her for a very distinct reason. And then, yeah, I have two conditions. Like, he's just a complete trollop. What a troll. And she's like, oh my God, make it stop. And she's like, conditions? He's like, yes, I won't tell anyone your secret. But in exchange. And then we see all the vampires like moving in the distance. You can't suck the blood of anyone but me. Now, having her do that is rather important, because by connecting with Jean this way, if Jean only sucks his blood, that means she can't attack anyone else. So on the surface there, by having her suck his blood, she can't attack anybody else. It's a guarantee she's not going to hurt anybody by being a curse bearer. She's always going to go to Vanitas. So there's that. That's step one. And she's like, what? Seriously? And Noe, meanwhile, is like waiting for them to come back. And she says, well, why would you set such a condition? And he says, well, it's very simple. And then he gives this explanation. He's like, having you suck my blood felt truly divine. And she's like, what? And she's like, excuse me? And then he goes into this big detail about how he like, there's like the chemistry of it. And he's like talking about all these effects and it's all spiraling. He says the pleasurable effects of vampire bites results from the aphrodisiac-like substance injected into their veins, but the efficacy may differ by the vampire's power and compatibility with the victim. So basically, when you get your blood sucked, you either have one of two things happen. I'll use the pink one for this. Either one of two things happen. Either if you are compatible, then it's a pleasurable experience. And it's like a drug. But otherwise, it can really hurt and have bad side effects. So Vanitas is like, this works out great because when you suck my blood, it's not the latter. It feels like a drug addiction, and I kind of like it. So it's very Sherlock, right? Very BBC Sherlock, where he's like, I kind of like the effects of it. So, and I like that we have the very psychedelic, bisexual colors behind us. He's like, vampires inject this substance to keep them still while they suck their blood. He's like, it's actually really nice. He's like, some vampire bites can cause sleep paralysis and other non-pleasurable effects, but that doesn't happen. It's still much of a mystery. I like that he goes into all this detail about there's still a lot of research to be done. And Jean's like, stop. That's too much info. Too much information. And he's like, what I'm saying is we have great chemistry. And she's like, stop saying things that can be taken out of context. She's like, I don't like you like that. And he's saying, right, but like, it feels like a drug when you suck my blood. So, and plus, if you're sucking my blood, you're not killing anybody else. So it's a win-win for everybody that it'll just work out if you do this. And he's just like a blushing belle. I'm like, what is your malfunction? Vanitas. He's like, being with you sets my heart aflutter. But it's all agitation, right? And the thing about it is that it goes back to the first couple of episodes where he first met Noe. He's treating Jean the same way he did the first time he met Noe, where he was just like, you know, all blushy and all goo-goo eyes and all like we're partners forever and all this, because he thought that he knows she doesn't like it, and he thought Noe didn't like it. And the moment that Noe starts to take an investment into Vanitas, that's when Vanitas is like, oh no. No, we can't have that. Right? That's too close. And him pulling her to him and hugging her and saying, if you ever thirst for blood, just say the word and I'll give you all you want. And she's like, that's so much temptation. And she's like, no. And she said his blood was very sweet, which is curious. He doesn't like sweet things, but he has very sweet blood. Maybe it was an overdose, or maybe he's diabetic. We don't know. And that's when she's like starting to have a fit. And she says that you had another condition. What was the second one that you had? And he's like, oh, yes, that's right. And he's like, from now on, I want you to say my name rather than calling me human. Because, yeah, he's like, I want you to say Vanitas, not human. He's like, and I don't blame him for the second condition because it would get really annoying having somebody call you just human all the time. He's like, it sounds a little degrading, right? But she ends up biting him on the other side, saying Vanitas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he just like happily accepts it because that's, yeah, because that's what he wants. It's what he wants from her. And the thing about it is that I fully believe that he does like Noe. He does like Noe, but he knows that's not going to work out. It's not going to work out under his parameters. So this is his means. This is his means of getting a fix. And taking his mind off of Noe with a woman that doesn't love him, that he knows he can use. that it's not going to be mutual, right? And then Noé waits for them to come back. Like he's sitting there waiting for them to return after a while. And then he notices them coming. And he sees them walking back. And he looks down at them. And she's like just like grumbling about something. Like seeming agitated, right? And she's just kind of blushy about it. And like giving him the side eye. And you almost wonder if Noé, like in this moment as he watches him, you almost wonder if he feels like she's in the same boat he is, where she's just like, she does kind of like him, but doesn't want to admit it. I don't think Jean necessarily likes Vanitas. I think she's just kind of like stuck in this circumstance where she's like, damn it, fine, I guess, if it'll keep you from spilling the beans, and Vanitas is completely taking advantage of the situation. But Noé then has this conversation with Dami, and he says, yeah, I saw them. And for a moment, she's like, well, are you okay about everything? And she like gives him, she's like, what's the matter? She's like, are you sad about it? You look as if you'll cry. And I love their relationship, because he's like, Dami, he's like, since hearing that Jean sucked Vanitas's blood, I had this agonizing feeling in my chest. And Dami worries that he's in love with Vanitas. Because I feel like Dami gets the impression that she kind of sees the writing on the wall that Vanitas is not she's not somebody you want your family to date, basically. And so she's kind of like, oh shit, does Noé have a crush on Vanitas? She's like, oh, this is going to be problematic. Like, she doesn't want to see Vanitas be hurt, right? And so for Dami, get this over here. For Dominique, she has this problem, right? That she likes Noé. She likes Noé, but I think she sees the writing on the wall that Noé does not like her back like that. He likes her as family and a friend, but not as a partner, right? So she likes Noé, and so I think she fears Vanitas for two reasons. One, because he is kind of dashing, and he could take Noé away. He is a threat to take Noé's heart, but also because he is dangerous. I think she's like, yeah, not only could Vanitas truly take Noé's heart from me having it, but also he's freaking dangerous and bad things happen around him. So he could get Noé into a lot of trouble. And I think she's fearful on those two fronts. So when he's like, I have this agonizing feeling in my chest, she's like, oh my God. She's like, well, what do we do with this? And he says, I thought about why that is. And then the look on her face, he's like, and this is what I found. And she's just sitting there like, oh my God, I was. And what she's expecting him to say is, I was in love. And she's like, oh shit, this is going to ruin all my days. But then he says, I was vexed that Jean got to him first. And she's like, wait, what? And she's like, what? And he says that I always thought Vanitas's blood smelled really good. And so had I known this would happen, I would have had him give me a taste. But now it's such fine blood that Jean's marked to have it all to herself. So Dom is just like, are you freaking kidding me? Because Noé, here's the problem. He's a sweet summer child. He does not understand love at all. Our sweet naive summer boy. But also he believes that the act of blood sucking is just recreational and to get memories. He believes it's building a bond between two people. That's why he talks about, and that's the thing, he talks to Dami and is like, oh, your blood is so delectable. And it seems like a very sexual act. But to Noé, it's not sexual at all. It's just him being like, oh, your blood's really tasty. And like, I wish I could taste Vanitas's blood because it must be so good. That's why she wants it all to herself. Completely over his head. And Dami is like, you are such a fool. Like, you don't even realize. He's like, can you imagine how scrumptious it must be? And she's just like, seriously, you're a handful. Are you sure? He's like, men like you should be gnawed on by women like me. And I was like, oh, hold on there, Dami.
And she wants to claim him. Like, she throws so many hints at him. She throws so many hints that she likes him and that he should be with her. And he's just like, oh, well, that tickles. And she's like, you have no idea how I feel. Like, she tries to make it a sexual act. But the thing of it is, Noe, when he slips off the glove, it seems very sensual. When he licks his lips, it seems very sensual. But Noe doesn't see it that way. He sees it as, oh, you're sucking my blood. Oh, cool. Let me do that to you. But he doesn't suck her neck back. He does the hand, right? Going back to that whole, we're just going to be friends, right? And Dom in that moment, the way she views the act through him, her gaze is seeing it as this sexual act. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees it as just this act of sucking her blood and thinking that tastes good, right? Because they're vampires. He's like, your blood is delectable. And just that look on her face where she just leans her head against his chest and her ears are burning red, right? She's like, Noe, you are such a fool. Because he doesn't get it, right? He doesn't realize what she feels for him. And she knows that her feelings are what they are, right? So they go to dance, right? And Dami takes Jean to go dance with her, right? And I like that we learned that, her dancing with an executioner could sully her good name. And I like that Dom's like, I don't care. I like Dami's like, I ain't no goody two shoes. I don't care about the family name. I'm gonna do what I want. Thank you very much. But I'm curious why she dances with Jean. I guess it's to get her away from Noe so he can't question her about loving Vanitas. Because I feel like Dom maybe understands. I feel like Dom is viewing the situation as long as Noe thinks that Vanitas is Jean and Jean's alone, he'll leave Vanitas alone. I feel like that's totally what she believes. And so we don't want to let him find out that's not the case, right? And so she quotes her father, saying, acts of pleasure come first and foremost before all other passions. Meaning like we're going to have sex first and talk business later, basically. And of course, I love Dami with her, I enjoy beautiful flowers blooming before my eyes. Like, she's just trying to seduce Jean over here, and Jean's like, okay. Like, just bisexual vampires everywhere. Dami's outfit is literally a bisexual flag. It's just missing the blue. And so I like that Noe says, don't you want to dance with Jean? And Vanitas says, I'm not a very good dancer. But true, he didn't say he couldn't dance. He just said he's not very good. And so that's when Noe asks him to dance. And he's like, can I teach you to dance? And Vanitas says, yes. So he could have said no, but he accepted the hand and they started dancing. And then poor Luca, he's like, I can't wait to grow up. I feel for Luca. I want him to grow up too so that he can confess to Jean, because I think he would when he got older. It's just so sad. And so as they're dancing, that is when he asks, what is love? What the devil is it? Because Noe is literally Christian from Moulin Rouge. She doesn't know love. And I like that Vanitas is like, really? You asked that? That is the question that you asked? And he's like, I don't know. I have no idea what love is. Which is really sad, right? And so then Noe's like, but you said that you love Jean. And he says, when I see Jean, my heart quickens and I can't stop trembling. But we've seen her like do that when he like is attacked by her and everything. And so he's like, for me, I've defined that feeling as love. So it very much could not be love. It could be fear. Could be fear, could be trepidation, but he's defining it as love. It's more interesting that way. He's like, I'm just going to pretend that it's love because that way I can kind of control it. And he's like, a racing heart and a trembling body. It sounds like a cold. And he's like, it is like a catching a cold. That's how love feels. It hurts, right? And then Dami looks over and sees them dancing together and sees Noe's face. And Noe, you would think he's looking at Dami, but he's looking at Jean at this moment. And that's when he asks, he's like, and Dami looks a little concerned as he asks, so what what is it about her that you like? What is it about Jean that you care about? And Vanitas's answer is that she's strong and beautiful. Now note, the things he says about Jean, with the exception of the ample bosom, the other exceptional things can be applied to Noe, right? He said she's strong and beautiful. Well, Noe is strong and beautiful, right? She's awkward and delicate. Noe is kind of awkward and delicate too at times, right? But she has an ample bosom and is a joy to tease. Well, Noe does not have an ample bosom unless he's got some pecs that we don't know about, but he is also a joy to tease. Like, Vanitas does like teasing him. But what else? Let's see. It doesn't seem like she'll ever love me. That was the line. And Noe is kind of like, well, wait, I don't understand. Like, when you love someone, don't you want them to love you back? And Vanitas kind of laughs at that. He's like, that's not what I seek. And he grips his hand a little bit harder and he says, Jean need not love me even though I love her. Because he says, and then that's when like the most beautiful background ever happens. He says, I have zero interest in the sort of person who would love me. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with that statement is I feel like at some point the Blue Moon vampire must have told Vanitas that it loved him, that he loved him. If it's a he, we don't know. But the Blue Moon vampire, we want to think it's a he, but we don't know. But so I'll say it. The Blue Moon vampire, what we know is that my theory is it told Vanitas when it gave him the powers that it loved him. And Vanitas was like, since Vanitas hates the Blue Moon vampire, or that's my theory, I feel like he's like, anything that would say that it loves me must be awful and I don't want anything to do with it. Now, is that a flawed line of reasoning? 100%. But I think that's where Vanitas is coming from. Vanitas doesn't like himself. He probably links love with the Blue Moon vampire, which he doesn't like. And so he doesn't want to be around anybody that says that they love him because that reminds him of the Blue Moon vampire and about himself and how he's not worthy of love. Now, will Noe, by the end of this story, tell Vanitas that he is worthy of love? Will he confess to him? Probably not confess because this doesn't seem like a straightforward BL, but will Noe tell him that he is worthy of love and that he can be loved back? I don't know. But I'm like, come on, Vanitas. Like, that makes so much sense now. Everything with Jean makes total sense now, why he's after her. Because he knows that it's going to be unrequited, and he can leave her, and she won't miss him when he's gone. Essentially. That he will not, like, if he has to leave her, or if he leaves, she's not going to feel sad about his death. Is what I think. Because we're led to believe that he's going to die, so... But just this ending here with all the colors and everything is so pretty. And Noe is just like, what? Okay. And he's like, there's still so much I don't understand. And we see Luca, we see Dami. That shot of Dami is glorious. I love that picture of her. And Jean. And he says, he's like, why? Why has my heart been sent aflutter? My ignorance abounds. And that's when his foot gets stepped on. He says, forgive me. You can do better than, oh, forgive me. Wasn't on purpose. So yeah. So it's like, is Noe realizing that he might like Vanitas? We don't know. Is he curious about Jean and why she loves him or seemingly doesn't? Who knows? So we find out that Vanitas and Noe are going to visit Ruthven, and Dami has been summoned back to the house. And we find out a little bit more about Ruthven, that he is a moderate that helped in the war between humans and vampires. So he clearly has a stake in humanity, pun intended, whatever that amounts to. Right? And so they're off to talk to him, and there's many who praise him as a hero. And he's like, oh, that's marvelous. And she's like, do you know nothing about anybody that's in this world? Like, come on, you're a vampire. You should know this. And she's like, maybe I should go too. And he's like, you can't. And she's like, I thought I had good intentions bringing you here, but I've just got you involved in a mess. And I like that Noe is so stoic and sweet that he's like, Dami, you always show your concern for me. It makes me happy to know that. And she's like, of course it does. She's like, fine. And then they leave. May we meet again, Manchetti. As they go to see him. Meanwhile, there's this creepy bed with the red, like, tapestry and all these, like shadows coming from it. Who knows what that's going to deal with? Anyway, so yeah. I mean, Luca did say his brother was a curse bearer, so maybe that's what they're going to investigate next is the curse bearer. Maybe that is going to be the thing. So who knows? I don't know. We're kind of like, it's all left to the imagination, right? Who knows what's going to happen, but oh my gosh. So yeah, this episode made me feel a lot better about the Jean and Vanitas relationship. It explains it a little bit more. Obviously, please no spoilers because, and who's to say, right? Who's to say that Jean may not develop a relationship with Vanitas through Stockholm Syndrome over the course of this series? Who knows? But it makes a whole lot more sense why Vanitas is the way that he is, why he views Jean the way that he does, why he's keeping Noe at arm's length, and why he tolerates Noe right now because Noe says he doesn't like him. Yeah, that all makes much more sense. And Dami's stance and all this makes more sense as well. So, lots to think about, y'all. Lots to think about, but I'm here for our bisexual vampire story. I'm here for it. I'm all about it, but I'm also curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, hints, or clues, but I'm curious to know your thoughts about this episode. I'm excited to see where the series is going to go to. Next week is the 8th episode, which rule of 8. Even though it's a 24-episode series, I'm still going to hold down. The 8th episode is usually a good one, so we'll see if next week holds up. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of the case study of Vanitas. Bye!